All right, there we are. We're live.
Woohoo.
Welcome to the Banter, guys. If you're watching on YouTube, we're so thankful that you're here with us today live. You can shout out in the chat room. I think on Facebook there's a comment section, but we can get all of that right in front of us here. So if you're here, say hi. Hope you guys are having a good day. My name's Lucas, and this is Pastor Greg. We're hanging out. I like to call this place Studio B.
Studio B.
We're just in a classroom at the church. It's great. If you're joining us on the podcast, we're so thankful that you're here and listening. Today's episode, I think technically, like with the mics and the video and stuff, is like finally working.
It's sweet. We're doing good.
I hope it is.
The last couple of times, if you noticed, like perspiration dripping off our faces, it's because we were out of breath, getting all the gear together. And
yeah. But this time it's been funny because I've been just sitting here in the room. Everything's ready to go for like half an hour. Just like, okay. And then, yeah. So anyways, it's all working, which is really good. Yeah. Greg, how was your weekend?
Good. It was super busy. We're 2 weeks away from moving.
Oh yeah.
So that's exciting. We're getting all our stuff together. Haven't actually packed much yet, but we're thinking about it.
But you staged your house, right? So
yeah.
there's you have a storage locker already. There's not a ton in your house right now.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
And it looks beautiful. We went over for dinner because we were actually allowed to have dinner together finally after all this lockdown. And it's like this house is like immaculate. Which is normally, your house is normally really clean.
It's, yeah. The minute people are out the doors, the vacuum comes out and everything else. Staging it, getting it was really big on getting things ready and
fluffy pillows.
Yeah. And to me, it's so cool, just all of the connection between the series that we've been doing on heaven, preparing for our eternal home, and what we've been experiencing as a family, getting ready for a new home.
Yeah.
Just so many parallels. It's really cool.
It's pretty interesting how that, I mean, you've been preaching for like 30 years.
Yep.
So I'm sure that happens all the time where it's like my actual life is, what is that? Oh, we just
wasn't
heard,
me.
I think they're doing blasting. I just heard a big horn.
That's it.
That's funny. What was I saying? Something about your life matches and like lines up with a lot of what you're preaching probably.
It's amazing how often that happens.
Yeah.
And I sometimes wonder whether it's God kind of driving home things in my own heart, my own spirit, or whether it's just because I'm more aware of those things. It's kind of like when you buy a new car and suddenly everywhere you look, hey, there's the same car.
Yeah.
There's the car I'm driving. Why didn't I see all those before? It's just you weren't really paying attention.
That's so true.
Yeah. How about you? How was your weekend?
It's been so busy. I can't even, when it's like so busy, you can't even really think about the specific things you did.
It's just a constant flow.
We went, the big thing this winter with Grayson being like 4.5, tobogganing, like going sledding is a really big part of our life. And so we went the other day. It was fun. It's probably the last time we'll go sledding this season because there's still snow, but it's starting to warm up. We're in Ottawa, for those of you who don't know. We're in like the Ottawa area. And I have family in Windsor, which is like 7 hours south. And they have it's like 10 degrees and the sun is shining and the grass is out already.
It's like that in my mind here,
yeah.
Just not in reality.
Yeah. So it's a little different over here, but hey, we have a really exciting ministry coming up called Exploring Life Groups. And Greg and I are actually recording some video for that right after today's episode, which will be fun. But we really want you guys to learn about what life groups are like here at Brookside. And so I'm tempted to say this episode is brought to you by
That's right.
Exploring Life Groups. If you want to know more about that, then go to mybrookside.church/life groups. And on March 9th, we have that will be a session kicking off. So we'll talk to you a little bit more about that at the end of this episode. And for today, we have one question that is like going to drive a huge conversation, I'm sure.
Yeah. Maybe before we do, just something I was thinking about was, and I think we mentioned it last week or the week before, is the connection between this podcast and that Exploring Life group experience.
Right.
One of the things that we're really wanting to help people do here is not only take the conversation a little bit deeper, dig it a little bit deeper into things, but it's also to hopefully whet people's appetite for getting into community. Can you kind of give us a bit of a sense of how that?
Yeah, I mean, the whole development of this podcast, this video experience was, especially these days with all the social distancing. Oh, which, by the way, Greg and I are like basically part of the same household, and that's why we don't have like a mask and screen, because my son goes to daycare at his house. One of the things that's really missing in your life, in my life, in Greg's life, in all of our lives is like this connection with people, because we don't have the normal weekly, like daily rhythms of like going to get water at the water cooler, or like going for coffee with your friend, or, meeting in the lobby at church. Like all that kind of stuff is just really more difficult to get. And so as a church, like we really want to try to make those connection points like more and more frequent, if they're virtual or if they're in person as things move along. But we also wanted to kind of take the big concepts that are in the teaching series and start to break them down kind of for you, so that you can have those conversations in your life groups like even more naturally. So it's a big development process, but we just want to make it easy for you guys to hang out with friends and to do your spiritual life together. And so this is just like one cog in that wheel.
That's great. That's great. Awesome.
And so some of these questions are just to drive that, and to help you guys to think a bit more about what we're exploring on Sundays. And so this whole sermon series that we've wrapped up already.
Yeah.
But we're starting a new one. So this is like the last banter about our heavenly series, which it was a heavenly series.
Heavenly.
Beautiful.
Heavenly.
But there's one thing that we didn't talk a whole ton about in this series specifically, and that is the concept, the reality of hell. And so one of the questions that came in this week was something like this: are we going to feel sorrow for those who are not in heaven, like once we're in heaven? Are we gonna know about that? Are we gonna feel sad? Are we gonna, all of that kind of emotional stuff from a Christian perspective when we're in heaven? Like, how are we gonna approach that and talk a little bit about hell?
Yeah, that's such an important question. The whole concept of hell is something that we didn't really have much of an opportunity to dig into in this series. We were kind of focusing on our eternal destination for those who know Jesus. What's heaven going to be like? But perhaps we should be planning to do a series on hell sometime, because there's so many questions, and these just kind of start to scratch the surface for a lot of us. And for a lot of Christians, these questions can be awkward and painful and challenging, and we try not to think about it. Let's just think about heaven, yay, yay, yay. But to really think through, what does the Bible actually tell us about hell, and our experience in heaven, how is that going to be affected by those realities? And that's really where we're going with that question, right? Is like, if I'm in heaven and it's supposed to be all joy and happiness and celebration and everything, how in the world can I be celebrating and having joy and everything else when there's people that I know, people that I love, people that I care for, who may not be there, who may have chosen, and we're not even used to saying the words, chose to go to hell. Like that, even saying those words, there's a pushback in my tongue that doesn't want those words to come out, because it's such a tragic and painful thought. So yeah, like that this question is huge, and we could take hours digging into this a little bit. Let's start scratching the surface of a little bit of a response, kind of a little bit of a framework that we can use in our minds as we try to answer that question. I think the kind of the super duper simple answer, are we going to miss those people? Sure. Like, we're still going to be us. We're still going to have our memories. That this idea that when we get to heaven, our minds are erased and we start new, it's like, well, then we're not us anymore. Like we are kind of the summary of our memories. Even when it talks in the Bible about God not knowing or God forgetting, it's not that he doesn't, like he's omniscient. He knows everything.
That's probably been from this whole series, my favorite takeaway is just like, it's a real place that Lucas Roberts, will go to. And the whole concept of like not being a whole brand new being, like that I will carry with me everything that makes me, except for the flaws, which my wife will be very happy about. That's just such a cool thought. And I think sometimes I forget to remember that.
Yeah. And when I think of the greatest kind of adventures we could go on here on Earth, they're just a really small example, a limited example of what we're going to be experiencing in heaven. That's going to be awesome. For me, that's a huge thing too. But this idea of experiencing that, enjoying all that, while knowing that there are others that are not. How do we do that? How it seems contradictory, right? And there's a verse in Revelation chapter 21, verse 4, that kind of helps start to answer the question, just kind of a lead into it. And this is what it says. And this is talking about when we are in heaven. It says this, he, referring to Jesus, he will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. All these things are gone forever. So there's going to be some sense in which we will be joyful, happy. Any tears that we have, Jesus is going to wipe them away. It's kind of interesting. It doesn't say that there's none. It says he will wipe them away. There's comfort. There's understanding. There's a lot that we gain in our understanding of what's going on. And I think some of those pieces that will bring us to that place where we can be in heaven and even understand that there are people that we care about that are not, it really comes down to the character of God, the nature of God, his love and his justice. And I think we need to understand both, that his love and his justice are perfect, and they are trustworthy, and they are, the more we understand them, the more we're going to totally agree with them, So his love and justice are true in heaven. His love and justice are true in hell. His love and justice are true here on earth too. So for me, that's a huge thing. It helps me to get my bearings. It's like, okay, I can, just knowing that if I understand God's love more, if I understand God's justice more, there's hope to find resolution to this question.
And before we started recording, Greg was mentioning how it's again, we sometimes we kind of mystify and make everything so abstract that it's hard to understand. But like on Earth here now, we have a criminal justice system, and the majority of people in the world agree that a criminal justice system is important and is, as much as there's different opinions, it serves a purpose, and it brings justice to those who have hurt people, or who have broken the law.
Well, imagine what it would be like if we lived in a world where there was no accountability for your actions, where you could go and rob a bank and the judge says, "Oh, no worries, you're good." You could hurt somebody else. You could do whatever you want to do, and no worries. You have a nice day. I would hate to be in that kind of world where there's no consequences for actions. That the idea of a justice system and an implementation of justice are huge. Like that's what allows us to be safe at night. We can go home, lock our doors, go to bed, and not wonder, is somebody going to break in because it still could happen,
Mm.
but there is a legal system in place, a justice system that in a lot of ways acts as deterrent and as punishment for those kinds of actions. And I think that's an important thing for us to understand when we think about hell, when we think about a place of God's punishment. And when you look in the Bible and you ask the question, what does it say about hell? Like, how is it described? There's a couple of key things that come out. One is that it's a place where God's just punishment is given out. It's not some crazy. Too often, it's kind of portrayed, and we talked about this a little bit before as well. That this idea that it's like this torture chamber from some horror movie, and there's devils with pitchforks poking at you and cracking the rack and all this kind of deal. And that is not what the Bible paints at all.
It's incredible how much pop culture plays into our theological understanding. And I don't even go, we don't even go and do the research to see what the truth is. Like, we can, it's there. Yeah. But it's almost easier to just be like, well, that producer or that production studio imagined it in this way, so that's probably what it's like. But
and
not necessarily true.
A big one is that Satan is the king of hell. Right. That it's his domain and he's in charge. And if you end up in hell, it's Satan and his demons that are going to be, poking a pitchfork at you and all this kind of deal. Yeah. The Bible says that's not even close. The Bible says, like, Satan is the biggest prisoner. Like, it was actually designed for him. Yeah. Like, he's in cell block number 1, solitary. Yeah. Like he's so that idea, like we just need
it's not like God gave him have a kingdom. You fell from heaven. Now you have your own kingdom now. Yeah. Yeah. You rule. Like, that's not really an accurate picture of what's going on.
No, at least not what's going to be in heaven or in hell. It's too bad they both start with the letter H. I keep saying them backwards and stuff, Oh, but yeah, so I think that's a really big part of it, the justice of God. And for us being in heaven, understanding the justice of God, understanding that there is legitimate, reasonable consequences for our actions, our choices. When you look into Revelation and it gives us these pictures of what it's going to be like in heaven, one of the things that and it's forecasting us there. It's a vision of the future. We're going to be standing around going, God, everything you've done is absolutely perfect. It's just, it's right, it's bang on. So, like, someday we're going to understand justice better. And the love of God is another key part to this. So often, that the accusation that can be thrown against us, and we can feel this weight as followers of Jesus when we're trying to help people discover their need for God and the opportunity to come to Christ and find hope and freedom and rescue from hell is like, well, how dare God do this? Like, what a cruel, mean, nasty God you follow to even come up with this whole concept of hell and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's just bad, and
I think that's a huge pushback.
Yeah. So, like, how do we respond to that? Like, to me, the biggest part of it is justice, the justice of God. And the other part is the love of God. Like, if God wanted to torture us, we'd be in big trouble right now. Like, there wouldn't, like, he could easily have set up the world to, with a rack on every corner kind of thing. Right. But what did God do instead? Like, he sent his only son to take our place, to rescue us. He came and told us, here's how you do it. Like, he became one of us in Christ to show us the way, to rescue us, to offer us freedom. And then he says, anybody that wants it, come. So while it pains me to think of people that I care about who end up saying, no, I don't want it.
Mm-hmm.
They are saying that. Like, you I can't go and change some knobbies in their head and make them respond.
Which is I mean, the fact that we can have that freedom to choose is a good thing because it makes our choices more genuine.
Yeah.
But it's also terrifying.
Yeah.
Like what you just said, like it's crazy and sad, and very sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, the love and justice are two sides of the same thing, you know. Like when the more we understand both God's love and God's justice, we're going to be going like there was no better way.
Right.
Like what more could God have done?
Yeah.
You know. So,
which is interesting because we have a question from Heather here saying, last minute question: if you want to fit it in, is there time in heaven? And so I think it's interesting because I believe we will have time, and you will have a lot of time to think about these sorts of questions.
Oh yeah,
and to even learn more about God's justice. There might be textbooks that angels wrote. Okay, maybe not. But just like to be able to ask and to ponder these things, like I believe you will have time. Right? Like,
oh yeah,
that's what I think.
My thought is, how could we not?
Right.
Like, we are beings connected to time, and God has entered into. He's created. It's hard for me even to understand the concept of something being timeless.
Mm-hmm.
You know, God somehow can stand back and see and perceive and be present, past, present, future. For us, we are finite beings.
Yeah.
We're not going to become infinite beings. We're not going to become like God in that way. We have godly qualities that will continue to grow. But so there will be.
We're people who process things. That's how God built us, to process, and for processes to happen, you have to have time and conversation and relationships. It all takes time.
And as you were saying earlier, how easily we can have our ideas and assumptions shaped by our culture. That's true not only for our kind of the culture that we find ourselves in, but the Christian subculture that we are a part of as well does the same thing. Because what comes to my mind is a line from an old hymn that goes, "And time shall be no more." And that sticks in a lot of people who have that kind of history and that kind of experience with some of those songs. And it's like, well, I guess there's no time in heaven. But it's like, what does that even mean? What is that like? How? what does it mean that there's no time?
Yeah,
like that just does it. So and there's nothing in the Bible that says that. Yeah. So it's like, let's be careful, kind of what we're looking at and what we're listening to and all that kind of thing. But yeah, totally.
Man alive, I wish we had more time to dig into this. Like, we probably should develop some sort of teaching on the doctrine of hell and kind of more details as the Bible presents them. That would be something we should probably work on at some point.
Yeah.
But you know what? We're just two guys. We read the Bible. Greg reads, he studies, he's got a library, it's available. We just do our best to talk about this stuff and to think about this, but it's not really special like about us. Like, you guys can also be doing all of this. And I personally think that the best way to talk about this, to learn about what the Bible teaches about these huge things like heaven and hell, best place to kind of talk through those is in community. And so you've heard me say this before, but we have, we just at Brookside, like, you just got to do things with your friends and with in relationship. And so we want to really encourage you guys to check out life groups, which is just kind of the method that we have here at Brookside to help you develop really intense, long-lasting, intentional relationships with each other. And sometimes I know it's a little bit scary to figure out, like, well, should I do it? Do I have time? All this stuff. So we put together a 3-week series called Exploring Life Groups, which starts on March 9th, which is next week.
Yep.
And so I really encourage you guys to sign up at mybrookside.church to figure out a little bit more about life groups and try to fit that in. And we'll go into all the details of it, what a life group really will look like in your life, like time and place and, well, Zoom call, that kind of stuff. And
glad we can do them. Glad we can do them.
So, without much further ado, we thank you for tuning in. Thanks for the questions. And if you're listening to the podcast, make sure you subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And if you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel so that you never miss an upload. And you can hit the bell notification button so that you're never late, because it will tell you when we've gone live. It will ping you on your phone.
Boom.
And otherwise, we will see you in the next episode.